Hi, I want to make a quick, hopefully quick video. I know I say that a lot, but I hope this one's quick because it's not something that really ties in other videos, so I shouldn't have to go on tangents and explaining how it has to do with everything else. So it comes down to this idea as cliches. I'm going to cover cliches again, and the idea of how people use excuses for their cliches and making it seem like it's something else than their Borg mentality or their sheepleness. So the basic idea is a lot of people say, well, I like this, I wear this kind of clothing, or I wear this certain hairstyle because this other person has it, and I'm just open-minded, so I considered it because it's really cool. And then they recognize, even though it's just something that everyone else wears, it's something that everyone else is deciding to wear, right? So they decide to wear it themselves. And sometimes I think they just confuse themselves. So they're confusing themselves, so that means that they're deciding to do it, and they don't even realize that everyone else is on board as well when it comes to that kind of thing. You take what someone else has and you decide to take it for yourself, or you decide to adopt something like that. And that's how trends get started. Like the 80s with the long socks up to your kneecaps, and the tight, the short jean shorts cut off from jeans, and the farmer caps, the farmer baseball caps with the screens on the side, and how contrived things were, and just how these trends start is that's the idea. Someone looks at it, they decide to jump on the bandwagon. The more people there are, the easier it is for people to jump on the bandwagon. That's how the mechanism works. It's like a virus. It spreads. The bigger it gets, the faster it spreads. And the more it consumes at once, it multiplies. Every time it gets bigger, it multiplies how much it gets, how much it keeps getting, and that's the way the mechanism works. That's a very easy idea, a basic idea, more of a gimmick video than anything, and it's excuses that people have, and that in and of itself becomes the cliche too, or the stereotype, where people use excuses to cover it up, sort of like asking for someone to admit the truth when they don't want to admit the truth, and they admit the truth, and then they say, so what now? What's the big deal? I like it. Yes, I like watching people suffer. I like watching people suffer, and so what? So what? That's what I like. I get off on it. Well, why didn't you just say it? That's all I was trying to see. That's all I was trying to see out of you, but you didn't. You wanted to hide it. What was there to hide when you come out with such utmost vindication that that's something that you do? You seem so confident now. You like it? Well, you can learn to not like it. You don't have to find that entertaining. You can find something else just as entertaining as, say, watching something on television that seems to be harming something, or you watch it to get off on the harm that causes something, the drama, or whatever it may be, or you watch something else suffering, and you get off on it because you're jealous of them or something. You don't have to get off in those kinds of ways. You can find something else, and you have to let your logic take control of you when it comes to those situations. You can't be biased against someone just because you have certain feelings for someone, because that's just falling for the mechanism. Falling for the mechanism that way isn't doing anything. But I think that's a different video altogether when it comes to the whole pain thing. And the suffering thing, and how society has a pretense of helping those who suffer, but at the same time has a very strong stigma against those people that suffer, especially those ones that cause too much problems, and at the point they just let them go because there's too much of a problem, and they're causing too much of a problem for them, others, and society as a whole. But I think that's a different topic altogether. The idea is using excuses for trends, just jumping on the bandwagon. The idea, again, that I mentioned before, using excuses. It's the nature of excuses is to cover up the fact that the real truth behind why you've decided to do something, and it's the very reason why talking to someone can be so frustrating, because emotions can get in the way, pretenses can get in the way. They can have a preconceived notion and understanding. They could seem like they understand, or they can seem like they're beyond, or they could seem, say, a person that's not that doesn't seem like it, doesn't put mohawks in their hair, doesn't tattoo themselves, can seem like on the surface that they're cliche, but at the same time, if you get to know someone, they're not as cliche as if you get to know them. And the same thing is with people that don't seem it at first, then you find something about them that's very cliche. Oh, they dress a certain way, and I don't see anyone else do that, and all that cool stuff. And it's all very unique and interesting, and it's unique to them. And then you find something that they will like watching. They like watching Jerry Springer or something, and that becomes their cliche. So you're going to find something about someone that's cliche that they like or get off on, because it's something that they were almost, sort of like confusing yourself. You don't know it's a cliche because you're so used to it. It's something that you've had since. And I guess the best you can do is try to convince these people that what they're doing. A lot of the time the cliches are negative, and in this case it's trying to convince what they're doing is not necessarily as good as they think it is, and trying to convince them. Have them become less of a stereotype or less of a cliched asshole. Because most of the time cliches are assholes. They fall for it. They fall for the mechanism. And falling for the mechanism is always a negative thing, especially for those that recognize and look outside the mechanism. They're automatically pushed out of the way. They're automatically excluded or pushed out by default, just because they have different beliefs, or they don't wear the same thing just by default. If you don't wear something similar to someone else, and all of a sudden you're pushed on the outside for some silly reason, because they don't feel good about themselves. They don't find that you dress the way they dress, but this double standard people have for their friends. Oh, you can have long hair, but this other person can have long hair because I know them. Well, that's really nice. That's really nice. I think that you're using a lot of, you have high standards for what you consider to be your logical standards for what you have and what you're willing to accept. You obviously have standards. Obviously, I can tell. A double standard, and that's the standard you have. You have a standard, and your standard is the double standard. And that's all that people have most of the time. They are bigots against you, but not against someone they may know, even though the other person they may know may be completely worse off or worse in many cases, and have exaggerated features that you have, or whatever it may be, compared to someone compared to you. And that's and then they decide to exclude you because you're just not you don't happen to have been forced into a friendship with them to begin with. They know that person and they're more willing to accept them, or whatever it may be. Because they're more of a, they become more part of the cliche. I don't know. But they accept them more. I'm going off in left field in this subject. Using excuses like that, and the trend thing, how things were more contrived leading up to where we are now. And that's exactly what happened. Where you see people wearing all sorts of things, dressing like they're in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and so on and so forth. People that smoke, people that drink at bars, and then they decide to drive home because they're so confident that they're not going to hit anyone, that they're better drivers as their excuse than they are when they're drunk than they are when they're sober. All those kinds of excuses. And they don't realize that those excuses are a dime a dozen, because that's what everyone else is doing. Most of the people that go to bars, they drink, and they're driving home on their own. So what does that say about someone? It says that they're completely obnoxious. And they expect that out of you. They expect you to completely destroy yourself, because that's the destructive nature of the Borg mentality. You don't think for yourself, so you end up being self-destructive because you have the other things thinking for you. You have the whole thing thinking for you instead of yourself, and that ends up being destructive. And that's not a good thing, but these people are so duped by it. They're so caught up in it. They can't. It's the fact that they get caught up in begin with. In a way, you can't blame them for getting caught up in some kind of mentality like that once they've gotten caught up in it, but it's how they get caught up in it. And I guess it takes a predisposition towards something, I don't know. I mean, I didn't really think this video out too much. Just decided to make a video, wrote down a thing, and then decided to make a video. It's about getting caught up in it to begin with, whatever it may be, small or big. The easier they get caught up in it, the more you can, in a way, find a way to blame someone for following the cliche ideals that people decide to follow. So they're dishonest, and that can cause some cognitive dissonance when it comes to trying to figure out exactly the mechanism at work here. So if a person is using an excuse and you don't necessarily know where they're coming from, and then they can use that as an excuse for what they're doing, then you recognize it. But then again, I'm speaking from a point of view that very few people may have. Not the cliches that think that other people are cliches. and not themselves. You can tell those kinds of people, where people that look like everyone else and then decide to insult their very own kind, almost in a way satire of what they're doing. They're very unkind. The very people wearing their mohawks and their tattoo piercings, their piercings and their tattoos, or whatever stereotype, the ones that grow out the facial hair, and because they have a baby face and they have to cover it up. Sometimes people are forced into these things, so they almost in a way indulge themselves in it because they're forced into it. And the guys that have long hair that tie it in a bun in the back of their head, or decide to do any kind of silly little cliche thing like that. And it's really, you almost want to see something different every once in a while. Wearing beanies, like wearing beanies on your head, or any number of different things. I guess I'm just going through a cliche list right now more than anything. I don't know where this video is going anyway. I just decided to go off on a limb here, and I guess that's where it's leading. So I guess it's more about cliches and excuses people have. And it's more about sociology and how interacting with people and seeing if you can really get to the bottom of who a person is, and if you can understand and if you can trust people's honesty or conviction, and if you can trust people in anything that they say or their excuses they may have. And sometimes they're just covering up from an emotional point of view. They're just covering themselves up from some kind of preconceived notion that a person may have, because they can understand it at the same time, but they're falling for it at the same time. They can understand the mechanism at work, but they can fall for it at the same time. They feel like they're forced into a situation, but they seem perfectly fine with it. So, yeah, anyway, I don't think I want to say anything else. But yeah, we have our niches now anyway. Even though it's a thing of the past, the niches have come back. There's niches now. It's more about niches in the present day as opposed to niches created by different eras in time or different decades that have led up to to now. So they've created niches now. So it's a matter of where you are, where you live, or where you decide to hang out, and that controls exactly how you think and how you dress and how you do all sorts of things, and cut your hair and do all these kinds of things more than the times. The times can obviously have something to do with it, like you change as a person as time goes by, but that doesn't mean the niches still exist. That's the thing. You'll just go from one niche to another niche. Yeah, and there's some niches are bigger than other niches, and that's the point. I guess everyone fits into a niche to some degree. But there's just those people that have the niche, but they don't fall for the niches that they should be in, and they don't associate themselves with them. So yeah, they're sort of disconnected. Yeah. Anyway, they don't associate themselves with any kind of niche. So this can be about niches and so the idea of niches and things like that, and excuses and things used for social reasons. Sorry, I don't know. I just decided to make this video at the last minute, so it doesn't make much sense. So I apologize. It's very disconnected. But it's something I was thinking about. Going more in depth with these subjects is obviously something the only thing I could really do is look at it from a different point of view. And I've gone over almost every subject you possibly can. So I'm just trying my best to find different ways to make meaning out of these different subjects by looking from a different point of view. And sometimes it can be confusing when you don't necessarily know where to go next. So yes, excuses, and having those almost white lies excuses people have for things that they do, to cover up for themselves based on emotional predispositions and emotional vindication. Anyway, I don't think I want to go on anymore, so thank you, and until next time, bye.